Greetings and welcome everyone to another EarthEcho International live event. My name is Casey and I will be your host today. We welcome you to a STEMExplore virtual career connection with Dr. Carlissa Callwood. She will be our expert today and we're so excited to have her. EarthEcho International is a nonprofit organization that was founded on the belief that youth have the power to change our planet. Our programs reach over 2 million people in 146 countries, and we invite young people to join us all over the world. In fact, next week we have a great event. Our 5th annual Youth Leadership Summit is going virtual, and we will be launching Ocean Echo 30 by 30. So we invite young leaders to join us, ages 13 to 25. August 6th through the 8th. If you would like more information and to register, just visit earthecho.org. We'd love to have you. Today's program is part of STEMExplore, EarthEcho's program that hopes to inspire young people to engage in STEM careers. And we want to thank our program sponsor, Raytheon Technologies, for their support of women in STEM. Now for some quick housekeeping, if you have joined us on YouTube, welcome everyone. Let us know where you're tuning in live. And also you will use that chat space on YouTube to enter in any questions that you might have of our expert, Dr. Callwood, today. If you've joined us in Zoom, welcome. We have a Q&A feature in Zoom, so please use that rather than the chat space in Zoom to ask your questions of Dr. Carlissa. And we will be having Q&A breaks throughout, and in fact, we'll kind of keep the conversation going. And anytime you submit a question, we will try and ask those of Carlissa right then and there. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. I want to welcome today's featured STEMExplore mentor, Dr. Carlissa Callwood. Hi, Dr. Callwood. How are you today?
I love that.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Carlissa Callwood. I'm doing great. And that was my mom, who you just saw. And I am the Community Conservation Education and Action Program Director at the Perry Institute for Marine Science.
Awesome. So wonderful to have you with us, Dr. Carlissa. We love having you back. You have been a STEMExplore mentor before, and your program was so popular that we wanted to wrap up our summer series with an engaging conversation with you. So we're so excited to have you back.
Excited to be here.
Yay. Carlissa, you're currently in Georgia, correct?
Yes, I am currently at my parents' house in Grayson, Georgia, which is just outside of Atlanta.
Okay, but you typically don't live in Georgia.
No, I live in Nassau in the Bahamas.
Okay, great. So we're going to find out all about your work in the Bahamas, and potentially we'll even find out what brought you to Georgia, which I'm sure most people can guess what has brought you to Georgia. But what we'll do today is we'll just frame our conversation with some leading questions that we have here at EarthEcho. But for those of you tuning in, please drop in your questions to that chat or Q&A space, and we will make sure to ask Dr. Callwood your questions. So Dr. Callwood, to start things off, can you tell us, what do you do for a living?
Yeah, so for a living, I am an interdisciplinary marine scientist. And when you hear the word interdisciplinary, what that means is combining 2 or more fields. So I am someone who combines multiple specialty areas in order to do my job. So I am a marine ecologist who studies how marine organisms relate to other organisms in the environment. I also use social science to help gain a better understanding of the role that people play in the marine environment. So what are they doing and why, and what do they think is going on, and how can people help? I'm also an informal science educator, which means that I teach science to a variety of people outside of a traditional school setting. And I also work in science communication. And that's figuring out the best ways to talk to people about science, and also training other people who work in science to be able to do the same with everyone and anyone, regardless of their background, experience, education level, or age. So I use all of these things collectively to be able to do my job. As an interdisciplinary marine scientist, I specifically study fisheries. So I study fisheries science. And a fishery is a system where you take or collect fish. And that includes the fish, the habitat where they live, and the people who are involved. So when you think about a fishery, it's a very interdisciplinary system naturally. And in particular, I focus on fisheries management, conservation, and sustainability. Management means ensuring regulations, policies, and other protections are in place to reduce any negative impacts to the environment or the organisms there. Conservation means protecting a resource to prevent wasting it or potentially losing it. Like you can think about that, like trying to prevent a species from becoming extinct is one example. And sustainability means ensuring that a resource is preserved and available for use and enjoyment by future generations. We want to make sure that 20 years from now, 1,000 years from now, people can still benefit from all of the things that the ocean provides to us currently. So as I mentioned in my brief intro, I currently work at an organization called the Perry Institute for Marine Science. And this is a program-based institution that conducts research throughout the Bahamas and other areas of the Caribbean. Perry Institute supports a wide range of research that's helping to protect our oceans. The research we conduct is focused on the management of fisheries, improving the conditions of corals, conservation and restoration of coastal ecosystems, and the conservation of threatened marine species like corals. We use the information we gather through research in programs to promote stewardship of our oceans. And these programs focus on enhancing awareness of the conditions of our oceans, working in partnership with the government and other local organizations to develop management strategies, and also educating the next generation of marine scientists, which is a big part of my role as the Director of Community Conservation Education and Action Program. This is a brand new program that I'm building from scratch for Perry Institute. And this program will empower PIMS to better work with local partners to promote conservation through enhanced community engagement. So what that means is we want to continue to increase awareness of the issues that are impacting coral reefs and other resources in the ocean, but we also want to promote behavior changes and actions that local communities, for everyone from the kids to adult, that they can do to also help support conservation efforts. One of the things that I'm really keen on doing as well through this program is to build local capacity so that the people doing research and conservation in the Bahamas are also Bahamians, and making sure that a lot of the students who are interested in marine science are actually able to build the skills and the capacity to go to college in that field and then come back and work in this field locally.
That is such a beautiful, wonderful goal to have. That is truly fantastic. Now, I will say, Carlisa, we already have a question coming in, and I'm going to back up a few slides. Danette wants to know, what are you holding in this picture?
I am holding a strip of baleen from a gray whale. And I will actually talk about that in a little bit further down in my slide. But baleen are essentially kind of like the teeth of certain whales, and they don't use it to chew. Instead, they use it to strain their food out of the water that they pick up.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you. And I saw the question coming in, and I thought, well, we are going to get to that, but I thought I would add that in there. Okay. So to continue on more about your work, can you tell us what an average day might look like for you?
So the average day changes for me from day to day. Primarily, I work from home, and that was the case before the pandemic. I just work from home even more now. And a lot of that involves reaching out to folks via email, phone, virtual meetings. A lot of my job is building community and getting our organization recognized in the community. So I do spend a lot of time trying to meet people in Nassau and eventually out in the other islands so that we can share what we're doing and also get people involved. I also do a lot of reading, research articles. You can see some here. So recently, in the past couple of days, I've been doing work on how we get people more involved in sustainability. So a lot of the things I've been reading have been in regards to that. And I also have spent some time the past couple of weeks writing a research article on my work in the parrotfish industry. I've been doing a lot of data analysis as well on research that has been collected. And you can see some of that here as well. And the past couple of weeks, I have presented at a couple of conferences. Most recently, the Bahamas Natural History Conference that was about 2 weeks ago. And I speak to other colleagues in the field, grad students or student like you who are interested in learning more about my work. If you go to the next slide, you'll see what I've been doing a lot of recently is getting more time in the water to practice my diving skills so that I can assist the rest of my team in underwater data collection as needed. It's not like a primary part of my job, but it's something that I get to contribute to based on what the needs of the job are. So I'm super excited about that. And hopefully once the new normal has been established and once we figure out what that'll look like, I'll be able to get back out into the various communities in the Bahamas to work with not only students, but other educators, fishers, and different members of the community in order to share our work, but to also learn from them as well.
That's great. And yeah, diving, pandemic can't stop you there.
Right? Yeah, exactly. It's the perfect activity.
That is really nice. That's great. And I know definitely a perk if the research team needs an extra body or an extra set of eyes. It's always so great to be part of that. That's awesome. All right. So what is one of the coolest things you've ever done or seen as part of your work?
So you all got a preview of this in the first picture, which is also here as well. I got to participate in a gray whale flensing. So a flensing is when you remove the blubber from a whale, and you can do that for a variety of reasons. So how this happened is I was working in Port Townsend, which is a small town in Washington State, so on the West Coast. And there was a juvenile gray whale that was estimated to be about 2 to 4 years old that was being tracked in the Sound in near Seattle. And it was suspected that this gray whale, this juvenile gray whale, was ill and that it was probably going to pass away within a couple of days. So NOAA and some of their partners were tracking it to make sure to keep an eye on it. And also so that they would know when it did pass away, so that they would be able to collect data from it and figure out what happened to it so that they could maybe prevent it from happening from other whales. So this did die, and the scientists brought it up onto land to collect samples from it through a necropsy, which is basically like an autopsy for marine mammals. And they wanted to learn the cause of death. And they then donated the whale to our organization, the one that I worked for at the time, for educational purposes. But that meant that we had to take care of the body. So they didn't want to take care of the body. So the easiest way to do that is to give it away to someone else. So in order for us to use this whale, we needed to get at the skeleton. And in order to do that, we had to take off all of the stuff that was surrounding the skeleton, and that included the blubber. So what our plan was to remove as much of the blubber as we could, and as much of the flesh, that's kind of gross, as we could, so that we could essentially make a whale burrito. And you can see that in the upper left-hand corner, right behind me in that picture. That's the whale burrito. So once we kind of got rid of everything, we wrapped it in a net, and then we dragged the net back into the water so that it could decompose naturally. And all of the little creatures like the crabs and the fish and the snails could eat away whatever was remaining, leaving behind the bones. So after about a month, we pulled the burrito back up, but at that point, it was literally just a bag of bones. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see what we ended up with. We ended up with all of these lovely bones, and we had someone who was very kind They lent us their very large greenhouse that was in their backyard. So we were able to place the retrieved skeleton in that greenhouse so that it can get enough heat to evaporate all of the remaining water out of the bones. And then we spent time with basically dentist tools, getting rid of all of like the algae or the little gunk and everything that was in the crevices, so we could end up with that beautiful skeleton that's on the right-hand side. And that skeleton is now being used for educational programs to teach kids and people in the community about whales.
So somebody is asking, we have a viewer asking, why would anybody want a dead whale? So what's the point of keeping the carcass or the bones?
Yeah. So the really great thing about having the full set of bones is that you can actually use that for a variety of educational programs. You can use it to talk about whales. You can use it to talk about anatomy. You can use it to talk about evolution. Because you can see like lots of parts that look very similar to other mammals, even us, even though they're whales, and you can do sort of like comparative anatomy. So there are lots of things that you can do with a set of whale bones.
Absolutely. Okay, so we have, now here come the questions. We have some questions coming in. So one we have, I'm going to get back, let me get back to the slide. The previous slide here. So one question we have was, how long did it take you all to complete this flensing? And so flensing, I'm going to throw in a question here. Yeah. Flensing, so you're doing a necropsy, but the flensing, was that the actual like taking things off to make the burrito, then to push it back out? That's what flensing means? Yeah, so flensing, the definition of flensing is removing the blubber. Wow. So we did more than that, but the part I was responsible for was specifically the blubber. Everyone kind of had their specific jobs that they had to do. Like someone was responsible for sewing that giant net, and other people had different things. This took us, I'd probably say about 10 hours. We showed up at about 7 o'clock in the morning and we stayed there all day until it was completely done. And we were very gross and smelly by the end of the day. This is really cool though. It, you know, gross to a lot of people, but for any marine bio geeks like myself, and I know Jacqueline who's behind the scenes, we're loving this. So sorry, the question that we did have coming in was, how thick was the blubber layer on this whale?
Oh, it was pretty thick. I'd say it was probably about 4 to 5 inches. So be like, wow, that. So yeah, so as we were cutting, one of the jobs was actually a knife sharpener, because after about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cuts, the knife would get so dull that I would have to pass the knife back and have the knife sharpener pass me another one. And as I was doing my next set of cuts, they were busy sharpening the previous knives. So
that is a beautiful model, actually, of marine science, though. So many skills, so many hands it takes to get the job done. That's great. And you said, so you pushed that whale carcass, the burrito, I'm going to call it the burrito, I like that. Yeah. Push that back out to sea so that it can naturally decompose. And did you say it took a month?
It took about a month. We thought it would take longer, but yeah, those little critters were very excited to get this, this burrito.
That is a tasty snack. Yeah. And then the idea with the netting around it was you would get the results of the bones, correct?
Right. And we also wanted to make sure we didn't lose any of the smaller bones, because some of the bones, like some of the joint pieces are really tiny. So we wanted to make sure we didn't lose anything in the bottom sediment. So the net was there to make sure we captured everything.
Very cool. Okay, we have another question coming in. And this one is, somebody has noticed right down here, there is a box of what looks like giant crackers or cookies. What is that?
Oh, I'm trying to remember. I'm not a marine mammal person.
I guess, but I was going to see if I was right.
What is your educated guess,
Would those
Casey?
be the discs in between the vertebrae?
Yes, I believe that's what they are.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
This is way cool. This is awesome.
Yeah.
All right, we have another question coming in. So, did the bones ever get to a museum? Dylan asks. That's a great question.
So the organization I worked for, Port Townsend Marine Science Center, is actually an aquarium and a museum. So that's where they're located now.
Wonderful. Okay. All right. So whale flensing. And yes, obviously a crowd favorite here today. One of the coolest things you've done. I love it.
Yeah. And I'm someone who never thought I would do anything with marine mammals. So to have an experience like that was pretty cool.
That is awesome. Yeah. So Dr. Caldwell, can you tell us a little bit about what inspired you to do this work?
Sure. So really what inspired me was where I grew up. I am originally from the Virgin Islands, which is where this pin is. And it's a little set of islands that are just to the east of Puerto Rico. Probably about a 3-hour flight from Miami. So I was born in the US Virgin Islands. So I'm an American citizen, but I grew up between there and Tortola, which is part of the British Virgin Islands, where most of my family is from. And I spent a lot of time traveling between these islands as a kid, visiting different family members via boats, and also spending lots of time with my family, especially my cousins who were around the same age, on the beach. And this is where my love of the ocean developed. So if you click to see the next picture, this is actually the beach where I grew up at. This pink building here is the hotel that my grandfather owned. And then if you look all the way down the beach, there's this purple building. That's, if you continue down, stop right there. Go back a little bit. Yeah, right there. That purple building was my grandmother's house on my dad's side. And that's actually where I spent a lot of time. So I would wake up in the morning, literally climb over the patio and go into the water. And when we came home for lunch, because back in the 80s, you would walk home from school for lunch, we would go in the water and then eat lunch and go back in the water and then go back to school. So I spent a lot of my childhood on that beach and actually walking back and forth on that beach between my grandmother's house and my grandfather's place. And that's where my love for the ocean came from. So I knew even as a kid that when I grew up that I wanted to work in marine science.
Well, definitely beautiful area. I can't believe that right here, your little stretch of beach.
Yeah.
That is just fabulous. This is gorgeous.
And my mom would always laugh that that even as a kid, like as a 4 or 5-year-old, I would walk that beach by myself to go from one end to the other. And, you know, that's something you can do on a small island in a small town where everyone knows everyone. But I was just so comfortable being out in the environment that it wasn't even anything that I gave a second thought to.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So Dr. Caldwell, can you tell us, are there any hardships that you've had to overcome throughout your career, and how did you do that?
I'd say there definitely were hardships. The first one is funding school. College is expensive for, I'd say, just about everyone, especially when you're from a middle or low income family. And I chose to go to a private school, which tends to be much more expensive than state schools. And I went to the University of Miami for all of my degrees, for undergrad as well as graduate school. And I was very lucky to have most of my education funded. I got a full scholarship for undergrad because I was in the top 10% of my high school graduating class. And then I was able to get some funding for my graduate school, both my master's and my PhD. But if you look at the cost here, at $2,100 per credit, and you think about most grad school students take 9 credits per semester, plus a research credit, and you do 2 semesters per year, that comes out to $42,000 a year before any of your additional fees. And that all goes to the school. So none of that money is even coming to you. So you still have to figure out how to get living expenses, even when you're in school full time all day. So like I said, I was able to get some scholarships and fellowships to help fund grad school, but I also continued to work full time to be able to support myself and pay like my adult bills, things like that.
Yeah, that is one thing I appreciate you sharing this information, because so many students out there, I think, you know, before you get into college, you don't have a clear grasp of how much do things cost and where does that money go, and even if you do get a scholarship or a fellowship, you know, how is that divvied out? So I definitely appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
And do you want to expand on some other hardships that
Sure. And I'd say the second hardship is representation. And when I say that, I mean, you don't tend to see many Black women in the marine sciences. When I was in undergrad, I was the only Black woman in my major. And then in grad school, at the time, the years that I was there, the period that I was there were only 2 of us, and we were in different programs. So it can be very hard when you don't see people who look like you, including your professors and other people in the field. And they don't tend to, sometimes they don't understand the experiences that you can have or the challenges that you can face being someone who's underrepresented in a field. And that graph that I added on there, that actually came from the National Science Foundation, who kind of looks at these numbers every few years. And in 2016, which is actually the year that I graduated with my PhD, Black or African American women only represented 1% of Earth, atmospheric, and ocean sciences graduate students that year. So to give you some perspective, that means that out of 15,000 graduate students who were in the Earth, atmospheric, and ocean sciences in the US, only 150 of them were Black women. So you can see that it's a very small number. And sometimes it's really tough, like I said, being the only one. And during school, what I did to help with that is, you know, I was able to use my personal friend group for support. Like if I ever needed to talk about something that I felt that my cohort might not get because they don't have necessarily the same experiences, I could go to my friend group. And after college, I looked for groups that really work to center the Black experience in outdoors and in nature. And one of those groups is Outdoor Afro, which is where this picture is from. And Outdoor Afro is an organization that lets lots of Black people who want to be outdoors, but they don't often see themselves outdoors, come together and feel safe going and exploring these outdoor spaces. So this is one of the groups from Seattle. And I was actually the local leader after going out with them for a year. I became a local leader in Seattle, and I'm also now the local leader in South Florida to help out with that. And go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, what a fantastic group. I love that.
Yeah, and you know, currently there are lots of new groups that are coming up to kind of address these problems and help fill these gaps. Which is nice because now, you know, I'm meeting all of these women who went to my grad school, but we didn't necessarily overlap, or we overlapped by like a month or 2. And it's like, how did I not know you or see you? But it's really great to like reconnect as colleagues working professionally and be able to support each other in that way as well. And my own social media, which is called Science in Color, I kind of use that as a way of highlighting underserved populations in science, just to bring more visibility and representation to the field.
That is wonderful. And some of our other STEMExplore mentors, which it's interesting that you say that you have met other women that you just were like, how did we miss each other? We, we went to the same school. Another group, MISS, the Minorities in Shark Science.
Yes.
2 of their 4 founders are STEMExplore mentors, and the 4 founders had this connection with the field school, which is based in Southeast Florida. So it's just
I'm actually a board member of the field school.
Oh, all right, fantastic. So it's wonderful to see all of these groups kind of coming to light and really getting platforms and getting their word and their message out there. So I love that. That's great. So we have a question coming in, and the question is, did you have people you looked up to as a source of inspiration? And if so, can you name one?
No one particular in the field. I think when I was in grad school, I really looked up to my advisor as someone, his name is Kenny Broad. And he was someone who worked in the field. He actually does anthropology, marine anthropology. And he also does really crazy stuff like cave diving, which is too adventurous for me. But it was like really cool stuff. And he worked very closely with communities, particularly in the Bahamas, which is one way that I was able to connect with communities in the Bahamas and have a lot of my research based there. So just following in his example in bringing in the social sciences to the work that we were doing in marine science and in fisheries was really inspiring to see that there could be those interconnections happening.
That's amazing. Yeah. So another question we have for you is, what advice would you give to students out there?
So my advice actually comes from Miss Frizzle from the Magic School Bus, one of my favorite shows. And it's take chances, make mistakes, and get messy. I think one of the most important things that you can do is try lots of different things until you find what works best for you. Even though I knew I wanted to do marine science, even as a little kid, I had no idea what all of the possible jobs were until I actually got to college and got experience, whether that was through my first job or through internships and fellowships. And all of those things were so different from one another. But what was really great about them is I got to see the things that I really love to do. And I got to see the things that, I like doing this for a summer, but I never want to do this again. And it's really important to have those experiences to figure out what is the best thing for you. But also have fun. It's so important to make sure you're having fun with what you want to do for the rest of your life, because it's what you're going to be doing for the rest of your life. So I like to take opportunities to make sure that I'm enjoying myself, either when I'm on the job or when I'm taking some time off. In this picture here on the right, I spent a lot of time working in science museums and aquariums and nature centers. So one of the things I always do on my time off is visit other museums to kind of see what they're doing compared to what I do in my museum. But I always go into the kids section and play with their things. I always stop and take scary pictures with the dinosaurs. And that's just my way of making sure that I'm always enjoying myself and having fun.
We are definitely kindred spirits there.
Yeah.
I love exploring museums and zoos and aquariums, and especially kind of the kid zones. And whenever I'm traveling with my sisters, I get an eye roll. Can we go to the museum?
Yeah, me too.
That's great. That's wonderful advice. So what innovation in your field are you most excited about?
So one of the things that I'm pretty excited about is the use of photogrammetry to help map reef health. So as I mentioned earlier, PIMS does a lot of work with reefs. And photogrammetry is the use of photographs from at least 2 different vantage points to help you obtain depth and perspective. And this is great for the work of my organization because we can take 2D photos around a reef to help create a 3D photo mosaic of that reef that shows all of its features, including its width, its height, all of those crevices, nooks and crannies, and everything that you might want to see on a reef. To create these photo mosaics, my colleagues, when they dive, they take anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 photos of a specified area during a 30-minute dive, and they swim across it in a lawnmower pattern. So just back and forth and then zigzag. And then they use a computer program to analyze all of the photos together and find the points where the photos match and overlap. And then that helps the computer program to recreate the original camera positions and develop the reef structure in 3D. So what you're seeing here in this video is all of the little squares that are flying around are the individual pictures that were taken and the position that the diver was in. And then the computer model fused all of those to create the picture of the two corals in the center. So it's a really neat way to use photographs and computer technology to help you analyze, looking at the structural complexity, help you determine how much live coral there is, or even measure the coral colonies, see how big they are, and other things, whatever else you wanted to measure without necessarily always having to re-go into the water. Here's another example of how the 3D reef is created. And you can see this one has hundreds of those little pictures put together to essentially make an entire reef track. So you're seeing multiple coral heads in this picture of one whole reef track. And what Perry will be doing with these models is we're going to use them to help us track growth at our coral nurseries as well as our outplant sites. We're going to use them to look at changes in the reefs, potentially resulting from damage like that caused by Hurricane Dorian during the hurricane season last year. We're also going to use them to conduct long-term monitoring of plots in the local national marine protected areas like the Exuma Keys Land and Sea Park. And we're going to use it to create detailed site maps that can be used by us or other partners doing this work. And what I'm most excited about is being able to use this in outreach and education programs to help teach folks about corals and how we study them. Because lots of people aren't actually divers, and a lot of people may not even know how to snorkel or swim. So they may see pictures of this, but there's something that you lose in a 2D picture that, you know, you can get like a better experience from seeing this 3D visualization.
Wow, that's really, really cool.
Yeah.
That is awesome. And it's funny because when I had seen that slide and just not even playing the animation, those little blue squares kind of looked like little rays.
Oh, yeah.
Little stingrays. And in fact, those would be where the picture, right? That's just to animate how many photographs.
Exactly.
That is truly incredible. So we have a question coming in. You mentioned that Perry is looking at using this technology in order to kind of track the growth of a reef. What would be a projected timeline of that? Since corals grow so slow, what does that timeline look like of that project?
So the great thing about some of this technology is we can use pictures and video that we have from years ago, from 15, 20, 30 years ago that are still in our files, and be able to rebuild what those reefs look like back then and be able to compare them now. And then we'll be able to keep these and compare them to what the reef will look like in the future.
All right, excellent. That was a great question.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have another question for you. How does your work contribute to a sustainable future?
Great question. So much of the work at Perry Institute does focus, as I mentioned, on preserving corals and related organisms that depend on reef habitats for survival and vice versa. The research we do helps us to understand the changes that we see happening, and the work we do in the community helps us to understand the role that they play in contributing to these changes or even helping. We've seen this play out with the recent appearance of stony coral tissue loss disease, which was just discovered on reefs in the Bahamas in January, and is most likely to spread by water from boats or maybe even divers and snorkelers. No one is really sure yet because the disease is so new. It was actually first discovered off of the reefs in Florida, and now we're starting to see cases of it in different parts of the Caribbean. But we're also looking at the impacts caused by different fisheries and the different stakeholders and how they are driving those changes in the fisheries. And a large part of my job is to help determine what actions can people take to contribute to helping us keep these ecosystems healthy. And you can see an example of that with the stony coral tissue loss disease graphic here. This is something that we just produced last week that we're sharing on our social media pages and on our website to encourage people who are already divers or fishers or swimmers when they snorkel. If they see something that might look like stony coral tissue loss, we're asking them to just simply take a picture of it and send it to us and let us know where it was collected. And this will help us track the spreading of it. And it's something that it doesn't need to be done by a researcher. It can be done by people in the community who are already doing these activities themselves. Our work really tries to highlight that conservation and ultimately sustainability can't be achieved unless local communities and regular people are involved in the work as well. And it's really critical for us to be able to communicate why conservation and sustainability are important to them personally. And many researchers are already doing really incredible work, but it really doesn't matter what the research is if the research doesn't get to the people. And that's really a big part of why I was hired on, and it's a really important aspect of my job. And that involves making connections with the communities where we work, building trust with them so that they know who we are, what we're doing and why, and that this work will ultimately benefit them too, creating opportunities for communities to learn and engage, inspiring them to take actions that make sense for them, and also transforming them into advocates for the environment. The best thing we can do is convince someone that this is really important, because then they'll convince their families and then they'll convince their friends and so on and so forth. So that's really the important part of not just doing the research, but connecting in the communities so that the research can be furthered into sustainability and conservation and protection.
Wonderful. That is, yes, definitely contributing to a sustainable future. That is so great.
Yeah.
And what a great citizen science project with this story, stony coral disease. That's really amazing. What a great graphic to help people track those changes. So I'm going to put up this slide right now while we will answer some questions. So you can connect with perryinstitute.org. Here are Perry Institute's social media handles if anybody out there wants to connect to follow along with Kim's work. Dr. Callwood was nice enough to give us her email address too. And of course, underneath her beautiful baleen picture, we have Dr. Callwood's social media handles that she mentioned earlier, Science in Color or Sci in Color. And we encourage you to follow along with her work and her life and everything that's going on with Dr. Callwood. So I'll leave this up for a second and we will come back to that, but we do have some questions coming in. So one of the questions that we have is from Dylan. And Dylan wonders, did you ever go fishing as you were growing up? And if you did, can you tell us a little fish tale? What was one of the biggest fish you ever caught?
So I did go fishing a lot when I was growing up. My dad loves to fish. So that is like his self-care is he goes fishing. And I was always very lucky whenever I was able to go with him. I did not get any of those genes. I am an awful fisher. And my one fish story is that I didn't go with my dad. I went with my stepdad one time. And we were out in this little tiny boat. And the wind picked up and just started rocking back and forth, back and forth. And I got so sick. I get seasick. So even though I work on boats a lot and I spend a lot of time in the water, I'm someone who definitely gets seasick. And yeah, I puked, but it attracted a lot of fish. And we were able to catch some additional fish.
That is definitely, seasickness is not fun, but
yes.
that is a bonus. If
yes.
people are fishing, it usually attracts the fish.
Yes, so I'm always there with the puke to help out.
That's a great story. We have another question coming in, and I think this is a great question to wrap with. What advice would you give to students whose circles, such as their family or friends, are not supportive to a career in marine science?
Ooh, that's a really great question. I think it's important for you, like I said, for you to figure out what works best for you. I know sometimes when family may not be supportive of a career or a degree, it's because they may not know of all of the things that you can do with that career or degree. So a good thing for you to do that would not only help you, but help them is do your research and kind of figure out what are the things that I can do with this degree? What jobs can I have in this field? What do the salaries look like? Where are the different places, not just organizations, but places in the world that you can work? And that way you can kind of have a defense for yourself. When you hear that comment from people in your family, you can be like, I can do X, Y, Z, or 1, 2, 3, but you have to have the knowledge yourself in order to be able to do that.
That's really, really great advice. And I know Perry Institute's website is a great place to see the different facets of marine science. And I admire so much how Perry Institute works with local communities, especially in the Bahamas, on the work that
Thank you.
You all are doing. I think it's tremendous. So yeah, I think that's great advice, just to explore, know what options are out there. Yeah, that's great. Well, Dr. Callwood, it was so wonderful to have you here again as the STEMExplore Mentor. Thank you so much for spending some of your afternoon with us.
And thank you for having me here. I love sharing about my work and my journey. So it's great to be able to contribute to the work that you all are doing at EarthEcho.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And for those of you out there, again, if you are a young person who is passionate about marine science or ocean conservation, please join us for our 5th annual Youth Leadership Summit. We are going virtual this year, August 6th through the 8th. Visit earthecho.org to find all that information. Registration is open until July 31st. And we are gearing up for a really great day, three great days of ocean conservation and meeting experts and networking with your peers. So anyone ages 13 to 25, we invite you to join us. Visit EarthEcho's social media channels. If you're on YouTube right now, smash that subscribe button and you will get all of the updates when our channel, when our events go live or when we upload new videos to our channel. So thank you everyone for joining us today. On behalf of EarthEcho International, stay safe, stay healthy, and keep exploring. Bye-bye, everyone.